The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars, planets, and civilizations. Some were peaceful, others warlike, but all shared one thing in common: the fear of the unknown. And in the darkest corners of space, where stars burned dim and planets lay barren, a legend grew. A legend of a warship so terrifying that entire civilizations fled at the mere rumor of its approach. No one knew where it came from, who built it, or why it existed. But one thing was certain: it was real. On a small, backwater planet named Kethra, a young astronomer named Tom spent his nights scanning the skies. Kethra was a quiet world, far removed from the bustling trade routes and political intrigues of the galactic core. Tom had always dreamed of discovering something extraordinary, something that would make his name known across the stars. Little did he know, his dream was about to come true in the most horrifying way. One night, as Tom adjusted his telescope, he noticed an anomaly. A faint, pulsing light in the distance, growing brighter with each passing moment. At first, he thought it was a comet or a rogue asteroid. But as he zoomed in, his heart skipped a beat. The object was massive, far larger than any ship he had ever seen. Its surface was dark, almost invisible against the void of space, but its outline was unmistakable: a warship of unimaginable size and power. Tom's hands trembled as he recorded the data. He knew he had to report this to the authorities, but something held him back. A strange feeling of dread washed over him, as if the ship itself was watching him. He quickly sent a message to his friend, a retired engineer named Jack, who lived on the other side of the planet. "Jack, you need to see this," Tom's message read. "I think I've found something big." Within hours, Jack arrived at Tom's observatory. The two men huddled over the telescope, their faces pale with fear. The warship was closer now, its dark silhouette blotting out the stars. It moved silently, without any visible engines or thrusters, as if it defied the laws of physics. "What do you think it is?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jack shook his head. "I don't know, but it's not from around here. That thing, it's ancient. And it's not here by accident." As the hours passed, more people on Kethra began to notice the warship. Panic spread like wildfire. The planetary government issued a statement, urging calm, but it was too late. The fear was palpable. Families packed their belongings, desperate to flee the planet before the warship arrived. Tom and Jack knew they had to act. They gathered a small team of scientists and engineers, determined to uncover the truth about the warship. Using every resource at their disposal, they analyzed its structure, its energy signatures, and its trajectory. What they discovered chilled them to the bone. The warship was not just a weapon, it was a predator. Its systems were designed to hunt, to track, and to destroy. It had no crew, no life signs, just an artificial intelligence so advanced it bordered on sentience. And it was heading straight for Kethra. As the warship entered the planet's orbit, the sky turned dark. Its shadow loomed over the cities, a silent reminder of the terror it brought. Tom and Jack watched in horror as the warship's weapons activated, glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. "This is it," Jack said, his voice trembling. "We have to warn everyone. We have to get off this planet." But it was too late. The warship had arrived, and with it, the end of everything they knew. The warship hung in the sky like a monstrous shadow, its presence suffocating. The people of Kethra stared upward, paralyzed by a mix of awe and terror. No alarms blared, no explosions erupted, just an eerie silence as the colossal vessel loomed closer. Tom and Jack stood on the rooftop of the observatory, their instruments frantically scanning the warship for any sign of activity. But the data made no sense. The warship's energy readings were unlike anything they had ever seen, fluctuating between impossible extremes. "It's not attacking," Tom muttered, his eyes glued to the screen. "Why isn't it attacking?" Jack frowned, his weathered face etched with worry. Maybe it's not here for us. Maybe we're just, in its way. The words offered little comfort. The warship's sheer size was enough to crush Kethra's atmosphere if it descended any further. Its surface was jagged, covered in strange, angular patterns that seemed to shift and change when stared at for too long. It was as if the ship itself was alive, watching, waiting. Suddenly, a low hum reverberated through the air. The ground trembled, and the warship's underside began to glow faintly. A beam of light shot down, not destructive, but probing. It swept across the planet's surface, scanning cities, forests, and oceans with mechanical precision. The beam passed over the observatory, and for a brief moment, Tom felt a strange sensation, a cold, calculating presence in his mind, as if the warship was studying him. What the hell was that? Tom gasped, clutching his head. Jack grabbed his arm, steadying him. It's scanning us. It's looking for something. The beam retracted as quickly as it had appeared, and the warship fell silent once more. But the damage was done. The people of Kethra were in a frenzy, scrambling to evacuate. Spaceports were overcrowded, ships taking off in every direction. Yet, deep down, everyone knew it was futile. If the warship wanted to destroy them, there was no escape. Tom and Jack, however, refused to give up. They gathered their team and devised a desperate plan. Using an old communications array, they attempted to send a signal to the warship. It was a long shot, but they had to try. If the warship was intelligent, maybe they could reason with it, or at least buy time. The signal was simple, a series of mathematical patterns, universal symbols of peace and curiosity. They transmitted it on every frequency, hoping for a response. Minutes turned to hours, and still, the warship remained silent. Just as they were about to give up, the hum returned. This time, it was louder, more intense. The warship's surface rippled, and a single, massive hatch opened. From it emerged a swarm of smaller drones, sleek and black, moving with unnatural speed. They descended toward the planet, their purpose unknown. Tom's heart raced. What are they doing? Jack's face turned pale. I don't know, but we need to get out of here. Now. The drone spread across the planet, disappearing into the horizon. The warship, meanwhile, began to move again, its trajectory shifting. It wasn't leaving, it was positioning itself. For what, no one could say. As the sun set on Kethra, the people waited, their fear growing with every passing moment. The warship was no longer just a threat, it was a mystery. And mysteries, in the vastness of space, were often far more dangerous than weapons. The drones moved like shadows, swift and silent, fanning out across Kethra's surface. They didn't attack, didn't destroy, instead, they began to gather. In the heart of the planet's largest city, the drones converged, assembling themselves into a towering structure. It was a spire, black and glistening, pulsating with the same eerie energy as the warship above. The people watched from a distance, too afraid to approach but unable to look away. Tom and Jack, along with their small team, observed the spire from a safe distance. The structure seemed to hum with a low, resonant frequency that made the air vibrate. It was clear now that the warship wasn't here to annihilate Kethra, it had a purpose, and that purpose was tied to the spire. What is it building? Tom whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum. Jack shook his head, his eyes fixed on the spire. I don't know, but it's not good. That thing, it's like a beacon. It's calling for something. The team debated their next move. Some wanted to flee, to join the masses escaping the planet. Others argued that they had a responsibility to stay, to understand what was happening. Tom, despite his fear, agreed with the latter. If the warship was a threat to the entire galaxy, someone had to find a way to stop it. As night fell, the spire's glow intensified. It emitted a beam of light, not upward toward the warship, but downward, deep into the planet's crust. The ground shook violently, and cracks began to form in the earth. Tom and his team realized with horror that the spire wasn't just a beacon, it was a drill, burrowing into the planet's core. "It's mining something," Jack said, his voice tense. "But what? What could be down there that it wants?" The answer came sooner than they expected. Sensors picked up a massive energy surge emanating from the planet's core. The warship's drones had uncovered something, an ancient, buried artifact, glowing with the same dark energy as the warship itself. The artifact was massive, covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. It was clear that this was no ordinary object, it was a relic of a civilization long forgotten. Tom's mind raced. This is why it's here. The warship didn't come to destroy us. It came for that. Jack nodded grimly. And if it's willing to tear apart an entire planet to get it, we're in way over our heads. The team knew they had to act fast. If the warship succeeded in retrieving the artifact, there was no telling what it might do next. But how could they stop something so far beyond their understanding? They had no weapons, no ships, no way to fight back. As they debated, one of the team members, a young engineer named Mia, spoke up. "What if we don't fight it? What if we talk to it?" The others stared at her, incredulous. "Talk to it?" Tom repeated. "It's a machine, Mia. A machine that's tearing apart our planet." Mia shook her head. "No, it's more than that. It's intelligent. It responded to our signal earlier, didn't it? Maybe we can reason with it. Maybe we can make it stop." The idea was risky, but they were out of options. Using the communications array, they sent another signal, this time directly to the spire. They transmitted images, sounds, and symbols, anything that might convey their plea. For a long moment, there was no response. Then, the spire's hum changed, growing louder, more intense. The warship above began to move, its massive form shifting ominously. The drones paused their work, hovering in place as if waiting for a command. Tom held his breath, hoping against hope that they had gotten through. But then, the spire's beam intensified, and the ground beneath them began to collapse. The warship wasn't stopping, it was accelerating its efforts. The ground beneath Tom and his team gave way, sending them scrambling for safety. The spire's beam had grown stronger, carving deeper into Kethra's core. The ancient artifact, now fully exposed, pulsed with a sinister light, its energy resonating with the warship above. It was clear now, the warship had come for this relic, and it would stop at nothing to claim it. Tom, Jack, and Mia regrouped at a safe distance, their faces pale with fear and exhaustion. The planet was crumbling around them, and the warship's drones were everywhere, their cold, mechanical precision a stark contrast to the chaos they had unleashed. "We can't let it take that thing," Tom said, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. "If it's powerful enough to make a warship like that come all this way, who knows what it could do in the wrong hands?" Jack nodded, his expression grim. "But how do we stop it? We're not soldiers. We don't have the firepower to take on that thing." Mia, who had been silent for a while, suddenly spoke up. "What if we don't need firepower? What if we can turn it off?" The others turned to her, puzzled. "Turn it off?" Tom repeated. "How?" Mia pointed to the spire. "That thing is connected to the warship, right? It's like a relay, transmitting energy and commands. If we can disrupt that connection, maybe we can stop it." It was a long shot, but it was the only plan they had. The team quickly got to work, using their limited resources to cobble together a device that could emit an electromagnetic pulse. It wouldn't be powerful enough to damage the warship, but it might be enough to disrupt the spire's signal, at least temporarily. As they worked, the situation grew more dire. The warship's drones had begun transporting the artifact, lifting it from the planet's core and carrying it toward the warship. The ground continued to fracture, and the air was thick with dust and debris. Time was running out. Finally, the device was ready. It was crude, little more than a modified power cell and a few scraps of metal, but it was their only hope. Tom, Jack, and Mia made their way toward the spire, dodging drones and navigating the unstable terrain. The spire loomed ahead, its dark surface shimmering with energy. "We'll only get one shot at this," Jack said, his voice tense. If this doesn't work, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They all knew the stakes. As they approached the spire, the drones seemed to take notice. A few of them broke away from their tasks, moving to intercept the intruders. Tom and Jack held them off as best they could, using tools and makeshift weapons to keep the drones at bay. Meanwhile, Mia set up the device, her hands trembling as she adjusted the settings. "Ready?" she called out. "Do it!" Tom shouted, ducking as a drone lunged at him. Mia activated the device. A sharp, high-pitched whine filled the air, followed by a burst of electromagnetic energy. The spire's glow flickered, and the drones froze in place, their systems momentarily disrupted. The artifact, suspended in midair by the drones, began to descend. For a moment, it seemed like their plan had worked. But then, the warship above reacted. Its surface rippled, and a new wave of drones emerged, faster and more aggressive than the last. The spire's glow returned, stronger than ever. Tom's heart sank. "It's not enough. We need more power." Mia looked at him, desperation in her eyes. "There's no time. We're out of options." As the drones closed in, the team realized the grim truth: they had done all they could. The warship was too powerful, its technology too advanced. The artifact was lost. But just as all hope seemed lost, something unexpected happened. The artifact began to glow brighter, its energy surging uncontrollably. The warship's drones faltered, their systems overwhelmed. The spire's beam flickered and died, and the ground stopped shaking. Tom, Jack, and Mia stared in disbelief as the artifact's light grew blinding. It was as if the relic had a will of its own, and it was fighting back. The artifact's light was blinding, a radiant burst of energy that forced Tom, Jack, and Mia to shield their eyes. The warship's drones, once methodical and unstoppable, now faltered and twitched, their systems overwhelmed by the artifact's sudden surge. The spire, which had been the focal point of the warship's operations, began to crack and crumble, its dark surface splintering under the strain. "What's happening?" Mia shouted over the deafening hum of the artifact. "I don't know." Tom replied, his voice filled with equal parts awe and terror. "But it's like the artifact is fighting back." The warship above seemed to sense the disturbance. Its massive form shifted, its dark surface rippling as if agitated. A low, resonant groan echoed through the atmosphere, a sound that seemed to come from the very fabric of space itself. The warship's drones, now disoriented and erratic, began to retreat, abandoning the artifact and the crumbling spire. Jack, ever the pragmatist, seized the moment. "We need to get out of here. If that thing explodes or whatever it's doing, we're not going to survive it." The team didn't need to be told twice. They turned and ran, scrambling over the fractured ground as the artifact's light grew brighter and more intense. Behind them, the spire collapsed in on itself, its fragments disintegrating into a fine, black dust that was carried away by the wind. As they reached a safe distance, the team turned to watch the unfolding chaos. The artifact, now floating freely, began to rise into the air, its energy forming a swirling vortex of light and shadow. The warship, still hovering above, seemed to hesitate, as if unsure how to respond. For the first time, the terrifying machine appeared vulnerable. "It's like the artifact is challenging it," Mia said, her voice trembling. "But why?" What is that thing? Before anyone could answer, the artifact's energy surged again, sending a shockwave rippling across the planet's surface. The warship, caught in the blast, shuddered violently. Its dark surface flickered, and for a brief moment, its true form was revealed, a monstrous amalgamation of ancient technology and alien design, covered in scars and battle marks from countless conflicts. Tom's eyes widened. It's not just a warship, it's a predator. It's been hunting for things like this artifact for who knows how long. The artifact's light began to dim, its energy seemingly spent. The warship, though damaged, was not defeated. It began to move again, its massive form descending toward the artifact with a renewed sense of purpose. The drones, now back under its control, swarmed around the relic, preparing to retrieve it once more. "We can't let it take it," Tom said, his voice filled with determination. "If that warship gets its hands on the artifact, it'll be unstoppable." "But what can we do?" Jack asked, his frustration evident. "We're just a bunch of scientists. We don't have the tools or the firepower to stop that thing." Mia, who had been silent for a while, suddenly spoke up. "What if we don't need to stop it? What if we can redirect it?" The others turned to her, confused. "What do you mean?" Tom asked. Mia pointed to the artifact. "That thing has power, real power. If we can figure out how to control it, even for a second, maybe we can use it against the warship." It was a risky plan, but it was the only one they had. The team quickly got to work, using their limited knowledge of the artifact's energy patterns to devise a way to harness its power. Time was running out, and the warship was closing in. As the drones reached for the artifact, Tom activated their makeshift device. A surge of energy shot out, connecting with the relic and amplifying its power. The artifact's light flared once more, and the warship hesitated, its systems overwhelmed. For a moment, it seemed like they had succeeded. But then, the warship's surface rippled, and a new wave of drones emerged, more advanced and aggressive than before. The battle was far from over. The artifact's light pulsed erratically, its energy now intertwined with the team's makeshift device. Tom, Jack, and Mia watched in tense silence as the warship's new wave of drones descended, their sleek, black forms glinting ominously in the artifact's glow. The air crackled with tension, the planet itself seeming to hold its breath. "It's not enough," Mia muttered, her hands trembling as she adjusted the device. "The artifact's energy is unstable. We can't control it for long." Tom clenched his fists, his mind racing. "We don't need to control it. We just need to distract the warship long enough to buy time. If we can overload its systems, even for a moment, maybe we can force it to retreat." Jack nodded, his eyes fixed on the warship. "And if that doesn't work?" "Then we're out of options," Tom replied grimly. The team worked quickly, rerouting the device's energy output to create a feedback loop. The artifact's light grew brighter, its energy surging in waves that disrupted the drone's movements. The warship above shuddered, its dark surface flickering as if struggling to maintain control. For a moment, it seemed like their plan was working. The drones faltered, their movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. The warship's hum grew louder, more strained, as if it were fighting against the artifact's energy. But then, something unexpected happened. The artifact's light shifted, its energy coalescing into a single, concentrated beam. The beam shot upward, striking the warship directly. The massive vessel recoiled, its surface rippling violently as the energy surged through its systems. Tom's eyes widened. "It's fighting back. The artifact, it's targeting the warship." The warship's drones froze in place, their systems overwhelmed by the artifact's attack. The warship itself began to retreat, its massive form slowly ascending into the atmosphere. The artifact's beam followed it, relentless and unyielding. "It's working!" Mia shouted, her voice filled with hope. "The warship's retreating. But their victory was short-lived. As the warship ascended, the artifact's light began to dim, its energy nearly depleted. The beam flickered and died, leaving the warship hovering just beyond the planet's atmosphere. Its surface rippled once more, and a new wave of drones emerged, more advanced and aggressive than ever. Tom's heart sank. It's not over. The warship's regrouping. The team exchanged grim looks. They had bought themselves some time, but the battle was far from over. The warship was still out there, and it would stop at nothing to claim the artifact. As the drones descended once more, the team prepared for the final stand. They had one last chance to stop the warship, and they couldn't afford to fail. The warship's drones descended like a storm, their sleek forms cutting through the air with deadly precision. Tom, Jack, and Mia stood their ground, the artifact's dimming light casting long shadows around them. They knew this was their last chance. If they failed now, the warship would claim the artifact, and with it, the power to dominate the galaxy. "We need to overload the artifact," Tom said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "If we can trigger a massive energy surge, it might be enough to destroy the warship." Jack nodded, his face grim. "It's a suicide mission. The blast will take us with it." Mia hesitated, then stepped forward. "If it saves everyone else, it's worth it." The team worked quickly, rerouting the last of the artifact's energy into a single, unstable feedback loop. The drones were closing in, their weapons charging, but the team didn't flinch. They had come too far to back down now. As the final connection was made, the artifact's light flared one last time. A blinding beam shot upward, striking the warship with devastating force. The massive vessel shuddered, its dark surface cracking and splintering under the strain. The drones froze in mid-air, their systems overwhelmed by the energy surge. The warship's hum grew louder, more erratic, until it reached a deafening crescendo. Then, with a final, ear-splitting roar, the warship exploded. A shockwave rippled through the atmosphere, scattering the drones and shaking the ground beneath the team's feet. Tom, Jack, and Mia shielded their eyes as the light faded, leaving only silence in its wake. The warship was gone, its remnants scattered across the stars. The artifact, now drained of energy, crumbled into dust, its purpose fulfilled. For a long moment, no one spoke. The planet was quiet, the air still thick with the aftermath of the battle. Slowly, the people of Kethra emerged from their hiding places, their faces filled with relief and disbelief. Tom looked at his friends, a weary smile on his face. "We did it. We actually did it." Jack clapped him on the shoulder, his usual gruffness replaced by a rare moment of warmth. "Yeah, we did. But let's not make a habit of this, okay?" Mia laughed, the sound a welcome relief after the tension of the past hours. "Agreed. Next time, let's leave the galaxy saving to someone else." As the sun rose over Kethra, the team stood together, watching the sky. The warship was gone, but its legend would remain, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the vastness of space. And though they knew the galaxy was still full of mysteries and threats, they also knew one thing for certain: as long as there were people willing to stand against the darkness, there would always be hope.